All right, I'm gonna do it like Usher, my way.
Yo, he's playing Usher. Get out there.
Hurry, move.
Go. Then immediately they dropped the Bitch Get Out the Way song came out.
That's right. Welcome to the Ill Video Podcast. My name is BJ McDole, and I'm here with my fellow co-host Phil Chappell.
What up?
What's going on, Phil?
Nothing. What's going on, B?
Hey, I'm just happy to be a part of this party, and let's just keep it rolling.
Keeping it real. If I was any better, I'd be two people. And on today's show, we are introducing a new segment called How Do You Know? How do you know? Mania versus excitement is the title of today's show under our segment. How do you know? Mania versus excitement. One question, many variants, a lot of differences. It's not like a Scantron sheet. Mania versus excitement. Excitement versus mania. How do you know if you're experiencing a mania or manic episode versus just being excited?
Yeah, it's a great question, and like you said, there's really not one specific answer because all of us will go through that a little differently. So I think where we're trying to go with this question or this topic today is some ways to help um, all of you out there that may be experiencing some manic episodes. How do you kind of see it coming or know that you're in it, and maybe some ways to help you acknowledge it and then kind of pull yourself out of it without causing any, you know, short term or long term damages or effects by your behaviors, or maybe some things that you would say that you don't necessarily mean or wouldn't normally say or do.
Good call, B. I actually went to verywellmind.com, and they posed the question, what is a manic episode? And I will read the following. What is a manic episode? A manic episode is characterized by a sustained period of abnormally elevated or irritable mood, intense energy, racing thoughts, and other extreme and exaggerated behaviors. People can also experience psychosis, including hallucinations and delusions, which indicate a separation from reality. The symptoms of mania can last for a week or more, and manic episodes may be interspersed within periods of depression, during which you may experience fatigue, sadness, and hopelessness. While manic episodes are most common in people with bipolar disorder, there are other causes for these extreme changes in behavior and mood. Recognizing the symptoms of mania is not simply academic. It's important to consider that the person's typical behavior as an important element of mania is that it represents a change from you or your loved one's usual behavior. Now, that's just they touch on it nicely at verywellmind.com, trying to summarize what mania is, and I just, they're correlating it to bipolar disorder, but it can also be related to a number of different things. Increased need for sleep, if you're engaged in many activities at once. Now, I have obsessive compulsive disorder. I know when I'm partaking in too many activities because I catch myself. Well, if I'm doing more than two things at once, I've, I guess, grown to know with the help of others. I've had a friend tell me it seems like a dozen different cookie jars, so to speak. He didn't say it like that, but uh yeah, it's definitely I've experienced episodes of mania or being manic, and those can be correlated to bipolar, obsessive compulsive disorder, attention deficit hyper disorder, a number of different things. But BJ,
Yeah.
have you ever experienced a manic episode, and how could you distinguish the difference between mania versus excitement?
Well, I absolutely have experienced times of mania, and in those times, it seems to revolve around stressful or challenging situations where, like you mentioned, having a lot on your plate, multiple things going on. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's all happening at once or in the same day, but things kind of get built up. Whether, let's say, you're moving and maybe you have a presentation at work, or, there's just some things that are in the works. And so it's
Mhm.
slowly building on. There's weight, and these are small stressors that take energy and focus away from just daily activities. And so over the course
Yeah.
of, days or weeks, however long this builds up, you know, sleep, you might start losing sleep, experiencing insomnia. You may not eat as much, or you stop drinking water. So your
Hmm.
physical body starts to deplete, which then
I've
affects.
never
Yeah.
I apologize for interrupting. Actually, that's one of the symptoms. I'm hyper arrhythmic. So that means that I'm manic all the time, but and that combined with me being an extreme extrovert optimist, it's extremely difficult to diagnose because I've had several different diagnoses that were obviously incorrect, and I was medicated and became someone that's just not who I am. And yeah, it took a long time. It was a long road. Let's just put it that way. And one of the things that I found extremely interesting on the verywellmind.com was that flashy clothing can be a sign of having mania. Bright clothing. Yeah. What about the Fresh Prince of Bel Air? He always wore like bright clothing. Hypomanic. Yeah, during a manic or hypomanic episode, a person is more likely to wear brightly colored or flamboyant clothing. Of course, most people who wear bright colored clothing are not experiencing a manic or hypomanic episode. That's the conundrum we find ourselves in today's segment. How do you know? Mania versus excitement. So what do you think, B? I mean, I've never had me personally. I think it would be a lie if I said that I've never ever in my life contemplated suicide, but let's not go down that path. Let's just I mean, because that's one of the one of the results. Feelings of hopelessness, I've definitely experienced, and I just so happened to experience a feeling of hopelessness this past Sunday,
Hmm.
but I wasn't in a manic state whatsoever.
Well, one thing I've noticed with the mania, it's not always something that will last a week or several weeks. These things can come and go,
Mhm.
and it just depends on everyone and how they are and react to these types of stressors and lacks of sleep and the interactions that they have with other people. For example, for me, I've experienced mania in bursts where I could be having a conversation with someone and it could be in person.
Mhm.
And in that conversation, I will then start to take over the conversation if I haven't already. Um, and I'll just talk and try to fill every void and continue on this just seamless conversation or me talking and providing all of the, verbal content basically.
Mhm. Like ad-libbing.
And just, yeah, just kind of transitioning from one topic to the next and just continuing on. And oftentimes, over the past few years, with a lot of experience and recognizing as it comes on, I catch myself about 2/3 of the way and try to back myself out of it. Close out the conversation when I've realized what's happened. Um, and this usually isn't a big deal because I try not to uh, let it happen when it matters in terms of with someone, let's say from work or, someone I've just met that doesn't know anything about me. But that's not always the case. It can happen. It does happen. And afterwards, you can then often look back and say, oh man, that was, that wasn't good.
Yeah.
If I was the other person, I'd be thinking, the hell's wrong with that person? You know, but, and that may not always be what they're thinking, but a lot of the symptoms or things that I suffer are in reflection. Things that I say yesterday will then, carry through into the evening. I'll wake up the next day. It has to almost kind of wear off with time for me because I'll reflect back on moments. So, in doing so, I've learned to recognize these types of moments. But it's often in conversation. And it can be with anything, it can even be with my wife where we're talking about something and I'll just kind of take over and provide my opinion and give, feedback and continue to add my opinion. And then I realize, okay, I've been doing this for like several minutes. And, it almost becomes like where you feel exhausted mentally because you've been kind of purging your thoughts and you
Mhm.
realize that you've just been your mind's been running and those are those things where you have to stop and realize like wait, what's causing this, what do I need to adjust to reverse what's happening right here, and that's the acknowledgement process where you're aware of it. It's almost like you've taken ownership again of these like moments of pause
Mhm.
where in a conversation where let's say you meet a new friend and you're hanging out, you've hung out a few times briefly and now you're hanging out and you find that you're filling the entire conversation. You're filling the gaps. There's no moments of silence. And then you start to ramp up your speed to get more out because you'd like to share. And, you really just want this person to know you as you are and provide them with like stuff that from the past that they wouldn't know unless you told them. And you could just, what happens is you're overdoing it. Essentially, you're trying to cram things that aren't necessarily relevant to
Yeah.
today just because you're trying to fill or bring a backstory and you can just overdo it. I just fill it with something. Well, it didn't always need to have that in there. I think that's another part of the mania is the uh, the idea behind you needing to put something there.
Mhm.
Like you could just say something random. How many of us have just said random stuff like and people look at you like, "What?" You've got an answer for everything. And that, again, I believe that's a sign. If you have this euphoric feeling that you have an answer for everything, you know.
I mean, what do you think about I mean, I know for me, personally, when I'm excited, I have a tendency to do a number of the things that are also correlated to mania, but I'm not manic. When you and I reconnected in April of 2020, not 2001, like I had foolishly said last episode. I don't know where my head was at, but anyway, um, yeah, I had a tendency to I was just extremely pumped up because I knew that we were gonna go. I'm like, all right, man, we're gonna both do this. We're gonna do this podcast. It's gonna launch, probably end of July, August, and we're gonna be able to help out so many people. And I've got so many great ideas on how we can just get the message out there. And then, but again, I mean, I think a lot of it was pressured talk, but there's a lot. But I was extremely excited. So I mean,
Yeah.
just and then when I talk to other people, that I explained my authentic enthusiasm to do this podcast with you. And yeah, they told me, they just that's just me. I mean, they didn't say, "Man, yeah, you're really manic," or like you're not like being yourself. I mean, sometimes you're yourself. I mean, there isn't a diagram.
You kind of created this thought just now of an image. And so if you look at it in terms of you are exactly who you are, it just depends on the balance of your overall system. That little bubble is in the center.
Mhm.
And when your body is at balance, everything is level, then you are who you are. And that's where you're at your close to your best, because you're aware and you feel good. And those are those days where you feel hopeful and positive and excited to just be you. And when that is off balance, that bubble slides one way or the other, depending on, what the balance is.
Consistency and yeah, I mean, you don't want to over reflect, but I believe in reflection because
So that's how we
having
learn.
OCD, yeah, you have to learn from your mistakes. If you're really acting like not you and you're way off the chart, then usually your friends will speak up if they're your friends and they're going to tell you, be like, yo, man, yeah, I talked to you yesterday and, you were like really going at it, man. You were really talking about this subject or this, that, or the other thing. And, I couldn't get a word in, then you really you have to take note of it. You don't have I mean, you shouldn't police yourself because you may be, spitting some genius stuff no one's ever heard before, and you don't want people to miss it. Sometimes maybe that's how you feel, maybe you don't. Maybe you have so much restraint that that's not you. Maybe you're extrovert and you're just, you know, you're restraining your own speech because you've reflected and you don't want to be thought of or, considered or put in a box.
That basically goes back to the balance. When you're at an even balance, you are who you are, but you're also likely to be a little conservative because you may recognize, hey, I'm in a good spot. Like I feel balanced, and you won't take risks because you know that taking those risks will then potentially put you in a place where you don't want to be viewed as off base or kind of far out or whatever you want to call it. But essentially, that's that happy place is at that balance, and you don't do your best work when you're at that balance. You do it when you're a little off because now you'll take a little risk and do your best. It's kind of like that. Um, most of us that experience some challenges or want to call them disorders, different things. When we're just off balance is where we find some of our best creativity. But the farther we fall from balance, we
Hmm.
go either negative or positive, then we've lost kind of the control and allows us to bring about that creative uh, self that we are, whichever what in whatever form that may be in. If
Mhm.
you or I were way off balance, we may have a difficult time just completing tasks associated with daily routine or even bringing this podcast um, to the channel. So
Yeah.
there's a fine balance. Like you said, being extroverted, you may find where you're not extroverted because you've pulled back out of
Mhm.
like caution to not get into that area that you feel as if you're starting to lose that control.
I'm with you, man. Catching up with BJ in early 2020 and just talking as friends, like growing up, we were boys. We hung out all the time. And finding out that he also suffered from an imbalance, made me even more open, I guess, to not only conversations about, those imbalances, uh, plural or singular. And it let me, you know, be my complete and utter self. And he would recognize when I was manic. And then there were times when I was just excited. But I mean, to distinguish which one of those are is extremely, extremely difficult. I know when BJ's excited, but then sometimes, like he said last show, the guy I grew up with smiled a lot, but I mean, again, it's been, a long time, 10 years since we've seen each other. A lot's changed. I mean, with family and children, more responsibility. I mean, everyone changes with age. I think everyone gets better every day passes, like a fine wine. But unless you know someone and if you live with them and you see them every day, I think you'd be more prone to being able to recognize if he, she, or they suffered from any type of manic episode.
Yeah, and just to kind of go back on that one comment that you made about having friends that if you interacted with them and then they maybe follow up with you and say, "Hey, you weren't really yourself," or something didn't seem right. That's true when you have friends that are like real friends, but we also have to consider that in today's world that we all interact in or don't interact in as much,
Hmm.
we don't actually have a whole lot of friends for the most part. Realistically, I don't have a whole lot of friends that are going to say something to me about the way I acted, unless it was, absolutely outrageous. But for the most part, people don't want to bring up any negative, like, points anymore. They're not going to be as supportive as we think or like them to be because they're
Good
much
point.
more likely to just ignore or avoid like that confrontation or that comment to say, "Hey, you were acting a little off," um, because odds are they don't know anything about what you're dealing with, um, and
And
that's just
that's
how we've all been, or most of us been, um, provided. The guidance to go forward is, well, you don't really want to share this with employers or your friends and people that you interact with on a
employees,
yeah. I mean,
I mean,
it's like a family matter. It's like that dirty secret. We're gonna keep it stuffed in the attic, in the box
yeah,
over by the Christmas tree, and yeah. So with that, it's like you can't rely on that. And I think that's the importance of really trying to just practice that awareness for yourself and knowing like, okay, something's off. Where's my balance and how do I get back to it? And again, I think these are other episodes where I'd love to share some of my ideas and experiences on how I keep that balance and know that when it's off, I look for the answer and narrow it
How you
down.
proceed, like, if you know that you're feeling manic, what do you do? That's a really good topic, and, I'm
Right.
sure we'll get into this more, and we'll delve deeper in future episodes, but just wanted to thank our audience, for listening. Today is Tuesday, February 16th, 2021, and you are listening to the Ill Video Podcast. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We're really trying our best to get this message out there, and we are not going to stop. This train is not going to stop for anyone. And BJ, I'd like to thank you again for another extremely informative and yeah, just a really cool taking the time to talk about this because a lot of people out there just don't, you know, realize that we even exist as a show, but they may not know about mania. They may not know about the differences and how to distinguish between mania and excitement.
That's right. And that's all it is just us bringing that out, sharing it with everyone that tunes in, listens, watches. That's that's our goal, and we're going to keep on doing it. And
Absolutely.
when you have to ask yourself, what is the difference between mania and excitement? Well, we would like to think of it as mania is something that you just feel that sense of it's taking you over. You're not who you are. Something's not right. You're off balance. And excitement, it's an exterior stimulant, something that is going to make you excited and pique your interest. For example, the show. We hope that we can bring you some sense of excitement through bringing awareness to mental health. And with that said, I'm just happy to be a part of the party. And thanks
Awesome.
for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. And we really, really appreciate it if you like and share, subscribe, and if there's a notification bell somewhere, please ring it because we're trying to get this message out there to the masses. So hopefully you guys can tune in, and we're going to be dropping at least one episode per week for every week until we continue adding on new episodes as in the ill video podcast. We're going to be offering a lot of different stuff to our supporters through different social media networks like Patreon and others, and you'll be able to help us out or maybe buy some merch. But we're we're here specifically to spread awareness about mental illness and to just talk about our own personal experiences. And I'm sure this won't be the last time we talk about mania versus excitement, and it sure won't be the last time we have our segment. How do you know? Brought to you by the Ill Video Podcast. Please visit theillvp.com. That's the ill, V is in video, P is in podcast. My name is Phil Chappell.
And I am BJ McDole.
Thank you for listening, and we greatly appreciate it. You guys take care. Until next time, stay classy.